Zoro's new demon kid power will surpass Shanks. One Piece Chapter 1078 revealed one of the most powerful attacks we have seen so far, Divine Departure. On the surface, one would overlook this as just one overpowered move that is solely generated by sheer haki of busted characters like Shanks or Roger, but that is wrong. Divine Departure is indeed a swordsman's technique, and we are here to tell you that Zoro, by the end of One Piece, will trump this move by ascending the 3 realms of enlightenment. How? Well, Zoro's new haki just brought life into his swords. Yup, he got lost all the way into the Bleach universe and unlocked Bankai.
What happened to the original plot of the movie?
After chapter 1039, Zoro managed to gain control over all 3 swords, whilst tapping into his Conqueror's Haki and eventually leading the Death God to pay him a visit. But this wasn't a new phenomenon. Rather, throughout Zoro's career as a swordsman, he had delved into the darkness that followed him. From the death of his parents to then his best friend Kuina, Zoro even choosing the path as a swordsman is to be with death, as at the end of a blade is the life of another. With that, Zoro's ascension to become the Sword God will require him to first become a demon so he can open the gates of hell, to then claim himself as the ruler. This desire attracted Zoro to his swords from Wado Ichimonji, Sandai Kitetsu, and Enma. And according to our balls deep prediction, each of their inner manifestations will be the key to Zoro unlocking his full potential to become the strongest swordsman in One Piece. This is because haki is more than just willpower. It's also the manifestation of will itself, with which even the Straw Hat ship Mary was able to come to life in the form of a water spirit. And from Vegapunk, we already know how this application of haki was used to create devil fruits. Now, when it comes to these swords, it takes the will of the swordsmith to give these blades their forms. In doing so, each blade is born with their unique personality. This was reinforced by Shimotsuki Kozuboro in chapter 1034. But the swordsmith isn't the only factor in creating the spirit of the weapon, as the wielder determines whether their blade can actually come to life. This is showcased when a swordsman shares their own haki to it over a long period of time, turning it into a black blade. You can say swords are given birth by the smith and raised by their wielder. This isn't a new idea, as we all know swords have personalities and a will of their own. Just look at Zoro commenting on how feisty his Sandai Kitetsu is, or how hard the Black Blade Susui is to control. And let's not forget how Enma turned his hand into a stick when he wasn't satisfied with Zoro's level of haki. To understand his blades, Zoro will have to learn to speak to them, where this power will transcend the voice of all things. You either have this in you or you don't, and even if you do, affinity between the wills is important. This could be also why Luffy can only hear other creatures like the Sea Kings and Zunisha, but isn't able to fully communicate with them. Over time, Zoro will keep imbuing his will onto these swords, and he will mold their personalities to his image. So what will these images look like, and how will they help Zoro become the greatest swordsman? Well, first we have Sandai Kitetsu, the first ever sword Zoro would manifest his power into, being ASHURA. Before even holding Sandai Kitetsu in his hand, Zoro could already feel this sword, as out of all the weapons in the barrel, he specifically chose the cursed blade. And then the cursed blade chose Zoro by not cutting his arm off when he flung it in the air. However, Zoro still claimed that this sword was a problem child. It was bloodthirsty and wanted to make him cut things without his direction. Thus, Zoro started to give Sandai Kitetsu more attention compared to his other blades. This explains why it was the first sword which manifested itself in chapter 417.
But didn't Zoro have Wado Ichimonji since he was a child? This doesn't make any sense, ABD. I think you're wrong.
Well, the reason Sandai Kitetsu manifested before Wado Ichimonji is that even though Zoro was using Kuina's sword for years, he was never communicating with it. They weren't on the same wavelength. It was only during his fight against Mr. One in Alabasta where Zoro learned to talk to his swords through the breath of all things. He even says it himself in chapter 194 that his sword understands his will now. And what does his sword understand? It's Zoro's desire, his will to cut everything in his way and become the greatest swordsman in the world. But unlike Sandai Kitetsu, Zoro doesn't truly understand Wado Ichimonji. With Kitetsu, Zoro knew it was a cursed blade, being a thread between life and death. So this desire manifested into the demon ASHURA, who in Buddhism are demigods of, you guessed it, greed, desire, and emotions. Sandai Kitetsu is a sword that is already set to be bloodthirsty, challenging, and it killed all of its previous owners as if it were an actual demon. So its manifestation blended into giving Zoro 9 sword style, which, by the way, instantly fulfills a desire for more power, tripling the output. This is why a lot of us believe that ASHURA was the apparition of Zoro's Conqueror's Haki, because at the end of the day, it's still the embodiment of his will. But in this case, it's the reflection of Kitetsu. In fact, Zoro's newest sword Enma has also manifested itself as the Grim Reaper in chapter 1039. Although Zoro has only used Enma in combat during the raid, it is actually the most experienced blade in his arsenal, as it used to be the sword of Kozuki Oden, who wielded it for over 20 years. And it wasn't just being used against some low-tier pirates, but against legends like Roger or Whitebeard. With that much experience, it's no wonder the sword has decided to show itself to Zoro after it recognized him as its new master. When Zoro first got Enma from Hiyori, the sword was hesitant because it didn't like being controlled by someone with weak haki. It needed someone on a similar level as Oden. So the very first time Zoro tested the sword out, it sucked his hand completely of haki. However, Zoro, being a haki master, was able to pass this test by taking it back. This test continues during Zoro's fight against King, where in a life or death situation, Enma starts sucking our boy dry once again, just like Boa Hancock would like to with Luffy. But here, Zoro realizes that Enma is simply appraising him, so he gives all of his haki to the sword, with not just his armament haki, but his conqueror's haki too, finally satisfying it. Here, Enma deemed Zoro's efforts worthy, and it stopped lashing out, which allowed Zoro to finally defeat King. With its personality already being molded by Oden, this test is all it took for Enma to manifest itself in front of its new master Zoro as the King of Hell who judges souls in Shinto and Buddhist teachings. However, a sword which has not manifested itself is the Wado Ichimonji, where this sword might actually be the key to Zoro's true power by the end of the series because of the significance it holds to him. Wado's manifestation will be the embodiment of Zoro's love and dedication to becoming the greatest swordsman for his friend Kuina. It won't be anything like the other two though, as you won't even be able to see it. Zoro's path in life has been very tumultuous. Ever since birth, death has surrounded him. With being an orphan to his best friend and rival Kuina getting defeated by stairs. That's what done her, bro. She was stronger than Zoro and the freaking stairs defeated her. Even being with the Straw Hats, he time and time again has had to make the tough decisions for the crew. For example, in Little Garden, Zoro was seriously about to cut his legs off to free himself from Mr. 3's candle service set. Then at Water 7, he overruled Luffy in letting Usopp leave the crew. Also, we all know what didn't happen at Thriller Bark. Even in the New World just recently, Zoro, with all broken bones in his body, took the Minx drugs, knowing the pain and hardship he would have to endure afterwards. All of this had manifested itself in ASHURA the demon and Enma the death god. However, Wado Ichimonji will represent the tranquility that comes after hardship. Just look at the name of the sword. Wado means way of harmony and Ichimonji means one looks straight. When together, it means straight line through the path of harmony. You guys can also keep things harmonized by clicking that notification bell for that nice little fact. With Zoro having a lot of symbolism from Buddhism surrounding him, this could be read as meaning the Wado Ichimonji is the path to his enlightenment. It will finally show him the true way so he doesn't get lost all the time. ASHURA being the first sword to manifest is also evidence to this, as ASHURs are creatures who inhibit the lowest of the 3 realms of karmic rebirth, being being the Kamlok, realm of healing. This place is filled with hell beings, hungry ghosts, humans, and lower demigods. This is the stage of the biggest suffering. The realm above the Kamlok is the Ruplok, which is the world of form, which can be achieved through gaining Dhyan, or in Zoro's case, acknowledging Enma and strengthening his Haki. This realm can be represented by the Grim Reaper that takes form after his fight. Finally, the biggest realm is the Aruplo, or the realm of formlessness, which Zoro will attain as his final power-up through his Wado Ichimonji. Reaching this realm depends on your stage of concentration, and we already know how important this is to a swordsman in One Piece. According to Zoro's master in chapter 194, a great swordsman isn't someone who can slice a rock or steel, but someone who is able to have such precision that a leaf cannot be sliced with his sharp blade. Zoro has already reached this level with Breath of All Things, but to go further beyond is a different matter. If we look at two of the strongest attacks we have seen in One Piece by a swordsman, it's Shanks and Roger's Divine Departure. With this attack, almost like how a leaf wasn't pierced, Kid or Odin weren't cut, but the damage was still done. This can be explained through the stage of Aruplok, as here you gain understanding over the infinity of space, the infinity of thought, the infinity of non-being, the infinity of unconsciousness, consciously, everything and nothing, okay? Basically, with the Breath of All Things, you can feel everything around you, but with this new synergy, Zoro through his Sword of Harmony will be able to imbue himself with his surroundings. This will give Zoro the ability to literally cut anything within his sphere of observation. This could even extend to future sight, cutting through his opponent's visualization of what's to come, making him just like Shanks as an observation Haki killer. Honestly, this could be what the pinnacle of swordsmanship means in One Piece, where most New World swordsmen can use Haki to cut physical things around them. But Shanks, being the observation killer, could be a hint that with his Griffin's awakening, he can tap into the non-physical realm, cutting your Haki itself. Zoro will have to learn this ability to go toe-to-toe with Mihawk, as Shanks and him are set to be on the same caliber. Also, we all know Shiryu is likely the opponent Zoro will face when the Blackbeard pirates and the Straw Hats eventually clash. So to comprehend the invisibility and rain-like swordsmanship of Shiryu's, Zoro will utilize his Wado Ichimonji's new power. Finally, Zoro understanding each of his swords to the fullest extent will allow him to slice anything in ways which is not normally possible. Like, imagine a homing missile having a mind of its own. In effect, Zoro will be slicing unpredictable cuts to his opponents, where using observation Haki on his intent will not help at all. This, along with Zoro's Balls Deep Prediction Haki, which is imbued in his eye, will make Zoro the strongest swordsman in One Piece. But if you want to know about the strongest devil fruits in One Piece, then check this video out instead that we did with Shonen Showdown.